Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the period television panel for the LMGI. I'm Dodd Vickers. I'll be your moderator. Before we get going, I want to tell everybody a little bit about the Guild. The LMGI is a nonprofit whose sole reason for existence is to unite location professionals and promote awareness of our role in motion picture, television, and commercial and print production industries. We do that through a variety of educational programs and public relations and marketing efforts, including the LMGI Awards, which we're all participating in now, and the Compass magazine. I'm one of the editors of the Compass. I'm on the editorial board, and I encourage everyone, whether you're an LMGI member or not, to check that out and to go to the LMGI website and check out everything and to join us. If you're not already a member, we'd love to have you. And if you need a reason to join, please feel free to email me or reach out to me. I'm happy to sing the praises of the LMGI and give you the elevator pitch on why I think it's so important for us as location professionals anytime. And you can reach me at dodd@doddvickers.com. But if you're not a member, you can read the magazine online. It comes out quarterly. We have all the back issues there for everyone to read digitally. And if you're a member, it'll be mailed to you quarterly. We are your people. So again, if you're not part of the LMGI, go on the website, look at it. If you have questions, reach out to any of us that you see that are in the LMGI or anybody you know locally and talk about it. But I think it's an incredibly important part of our industry, and I hope you guys do join us. All right, we're going to get started with our interviews today for the television period nominees. So let's start off with Mark from The Crown. Mark, welcome and congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you very much. Very humbled. Thank you.
This is your well, you won in season 4, correct?
Yeah. I think we won. I think we won before that as well. I think Pat Karen was the previous SLM, or I think won for season 2.
Okay. And you've been on the show for what, 9 years?
Yeah, the whole shebang, every single moment of it.
So obviously, one of the first questions that people reached out to me and asked me to ask you was, dealing with such iconic locations as Buckingham Palace and places people think they know. My wife and I love the show. We watched it, and you can see differences if you're looking for them, but you get so absorbed in the story you really don't notice. But what were some of the challenges in putting together some of those iconic locations with others that in the area, and how hard were they to find and get them to work with you?
I think the in terms of Buckingham Palace, we had sort of 4 or 5 different locations that served as our Buckingham Palace, that were various, either a stately home in Hampshire. I mean, the most interesting one was probably Lancaster House, which is literally a stone's throw from the palace. That's owned by the FCO, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and it was handed over by the royal family to them for them to do their sort of conferences and things like that. And that literally is Buckingham Palace. And then the other locations, it's the same. It's the game we all play. It's negotiation and treading lightly and knowing where the boundaries are, I think, for us.
I know you mentioned that every day of filming involved, pretty heavy background actor days, 300 and 400 people at a time. And then on top of that, you're filming quite often in downtown London, and there's no way around causing disruption. How did that go for you? How was it received in the city itself, given the content you were dealing with?
It was quite difficult. I mean, that was probably one of our toughest negotiations, was actually with the Corporation of London, when we were dealing around the sensitivities of the Diana story. Specifically trying to shoot some of our Paris elements in the city, because obviously architecturally they work perfectly. So we did have some obstacles to overcome in terms of dealing with the powers that be in the city, but we got over that in the end. So yeah, that was a good achievement.
So because you were dealing with the whole story of Diana in the most recent couple of seasons, did you find that people were more or a little more hesitant to embrace your filming when you were knocking on doors and introducing yourself and the project that was coming to their area?
I think they needed to be convinced how sensitively we were treating that element of the story. I think if they thought it was going to be gratuitous in any way, they were very reticent about allowing us to sort of film with them, mainly in private homes or privately owned locations. And again, in some of the councils in London needed to be reassured that, we were doing it in a way that wasn't going to offend and was suitably dramatic but not offensive.
Dealing with going into downtown London and recreating some of the iconic scenes, I know you and I briefly spoke. You mentioned one of your favorite scenes was the episode where they were going out, the two sisters, Margaret and Elizabeth, going out and milling with the crowd on VE Day.
Yeah, and that was something we couldn't shoot in London. We needed at least 4 consecutive nights, which is just impossible to do in London unless you're doing it weekends, then packing down, coming back the following weekend. So we went up to Hull, who's the city centre in Hull. Is a fantastic sort of double for the centre of London. And we were doing VE night. It was 1945. We were able to shut down the whole set of streets that we needed for those crowd scenes and the celebrations, and create the area outside City Hall and the theatre as became our Piccadilly Circus. So it worked perfectly for us to go up to Hull. Not something we were able to do in London, unfortunately.
You did go out to some other cities to recreate parts of London that you really couldn't close down or take over. What areas other than the Hull did you go to for
So we've
some of
been
the other episodes?
where have we been? We've been Liverpool. We've done some Liverpool. We've been in Bradford as well. We certain areas of northern England that we can easily sort of double for London when we've got such restrictions of, let's say, nighttime filming, for example.
And knowing that a lot of these locations are historical and managed by the historical trust, are there any special hurdles to overcome to going in and filming in some of these locations?
I think reputationally we've got a really sound reputation as a show, so the crew are professional enough to work within those environments, and people like the National Trust, English Heritage, all those guys, they trust us to sort of behave, if you like. So I don't think we really had any problems after the initial stages of the first 2 seasons, maybe developing those relationships. But I think once we'd proved ourselves, we didn't have any problems with those guys.
Hey, Stevie has a question for you. I'm going to try and interject these and let people ask them themselves as often as I can. But Stevie, you want to ask a question?
I was just wondering what you use, Mark, for Balmoral Castle.
Balmoral, again, it was split between a lovely house up in Scotland, the Highlands of Scotland, called Ardverity, which was our exterior, and then a number of the interiors at that place. But we also had another house quite close to where our studios in Elstree, North Mims Park, which again gave us, as well as an exterior for Checkers, gave us a good Balmoral interior. Yeah.
I was just thinking about, I know what it's like when we go into just a really nice home or mansion here in the Georgia area where I work. I can't imagine the measures you guys take to protect the location when you're going into one of these, especially what those managed by the Historic Trust. That's why I was curious about the, what the reservations they might have when you guys come in on a location like that.
I mean, some of the National Trust houses, for example, will vet everything that goes in terms of props. So we know more often than not we have like easy ups outside, and every sort of wooden table that goes in is inspected for wood rot before woodworm before it's allowed in the house. So there are measures that we have to go through.
Wow.
Yeah. It's quite strict. And then we have conservators with us, so they might provide 2 or 3 people just to oversee what we're doing, and that's the kind of key relationship on the daily basis when we're filming those guys.
How much of it is on stage versus on a location?
Oh, definitely more location. Got 80%.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any standing stages that you use on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, I mean, Downing Street was one of our standing sets on the back lot. We had studio work was the kind of key bedrooms in Buckingham Palace, like been the Queen's Suite and Philip's Suite, various offices we put on the stage. Also, Britannia was built on the back lot as well. Yeah, so we had some really quite substantial stuff on the back lot.
you mentioned bringing in some stuff, but how many places are restricted to shoot it as is? You're not even allowed to move anything or bring anything in.
That's quite rare. I think we always
Oh.
manage to negotiate, something that the designer's vision is normally achievable in all these places.
One of the questions somebody emailed me, they weren't going to be able to be here for the chat itself, and they were wondering if the crowds were bigger. We get crowds all the time filming when you're in public. Obviously, I'm sure you did as well. Did you find that a lot of people wanted to be there to see the royal family, even though it's not really the royal family, it's actors, and
Yeah,
get a glimpse of Diana and whatnot?
Yeah. In the public spaces, we did have quite a few, barriered kind of lines of people interested in what we were doing. Yeah, definitely. Paps, lots of paps.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Paps all the time.
Well, I guess that story's going to bring them out no matter what.
Yeah, yeah.
The where did you film the island, Princess Margaret, where she goes in the, I think it's supposed to be in the Bahamas. Did y'all actually travel, or was there a location there in the UK?
No, I think that was part of our Spain element. I think we did some of that. It was the Mustique stuff was done out in Spain. Yeah.
So you did do some filming outside of the UK as well.
We did, yeah, but we didn't. I didn't have any involvement in setting that up. We had I think it was the guys at Palmer Pictures looked after our Spanish adventures.
On a show like this, I'm going to ask this one for you, Stevie. Can you talk about the staffing for your department on a show like this, and do you shoot it in blocks, or is it all over the place when you're scheduling it? I know that you mentioned that the last 2 seasons were pretty much shot as one unit.
Yeah, that was a bit of a we went into factory mode then, because essentially what we do, we split into 2 full main units shooting constantly for 9 months. So it's broken into blocks, but it's a bit of a beast. It is so we've got King unit, Queen unit, shooting, overlapping, and once we start filming, it's 9 months on the road, not stopping. So yeah, it's a bit of a beast. And my staffing, I mean, back in season 1 when Pat started, there were 7 of us, and I think my core team at the end of season 6, without marshals that on dailies, was 27 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you mentioned King and Queen unit. I have to ask, which was the primary unit?
No, they're both full on main units. Yeah.
So there wasn't like first and second unit, and you were queening them. It was just those
each one would
full main units.
No, each one would have its own second unit. So essentially, sometimes there could be 4 units out.
The other thing I was curious about was shutting down roads in London for some of the period scenes. Did you move a lot of those outside, or were you trying to do some of those? And which one was the most challenging for you to pull off?
No, we
like
could.
The crash scene specifically, I was wondering about.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, in season 6, there's the scenes of when the Queen is dreaming about Tony Blair being the king. And we had to shut down an area of London that's quite, if you give them enough notice, you can do most things in London. It takes a bit of time, though. I mean, you're talking about 2 or 3 months in advance. And as everyone knows, schedules change, scripts change. So it's hard to do that. But, we had those plans in place. So it is possible. It's, but again, it's closing roads for 300 background is not the easiest of tasks.
What was the scariest moment for you on location?
Scariest moment.
I know that I always look for a funny story behind the scenes, but I know that you mentioned to me just the sheer scale of everything every day. You felt like you were walking a bit of a tightrope, but so I wondered if there was one particular day that you were like, oh, if we pulled this off.
Not really. I think every day's the same. We're on that kind of knife edge, aren't we? In locations, it's like it's either going to go your way or it's not. And 9 times out of 10, it goes your way, and that, thank God for that. But you're just worried about that 1 or 2 occasions where it might just all fall apart, and you're just trying to firefight your way through a day. It's horrible.
This is from Russ Gladden. What location were you most proud of, and why?
I think in terms of when we got to the end of season 6, and as we said earlier, 5 and 6 were shot quite close together. It was just a bit of a reflection on what we'd achieved throughout all 6 seasons. And I think for me, my favorite location was when we basically closed down Carnarvon to do the investiture, Prince of Wales investiture at Carnarvon Castle, which was quite a, no mean feat for us to do. So that, in terms of enjoying a location and being most proud, I think for me that was the one. It's Carnarvon.
I will say that when I was watching the show, when you cut to the Ritz,
in
I
season
thought
6,
you were
yeah.
at the Ritz. I mean, but that's up in the countryside somewhere.
So the Ritz, yeah, it was up in Hull. We used the theatre at Hull for the arrival in the hallway, and then down as we went into the basement for the jiving and the dancing. We did a theatre club in central London, and then the main ballroom where they start was actually at the Savoy. So it was the Savoy ballroom rather than the Ritz ballroom.
Yeah, it was really well done. I mean, I always like seeing how we pull those puzzle pieces together,
Yeah,
and make it so seamless when that they blend together so well. You totally believe you're in the same building.
yeah, we did that a
Well,
lot on the ground.
congratulations again on your nomination. You guys did a fantastic job. Well, everybody in the chat room's complimenting you and saying well done and how beautiful the
Thank
show
you.
was.
Thank you, everyone.
And I think locations obviously played a key part of that production. You can see why you were nominated. So I'll give you a standing ovation for that as well. Congratulations.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. We're going to make a jump and go to another period drama, but a much, in a wholly different place. We're moving over to Tokyo for Tokyo Vice.
Hello. I am actually on behalf of Masa Aikawa, who is an LMGI member. I am one of the producers of the show. I was a producer on season 1 and a co-executive producer on season 2. In Japan, we kind of all kind of support the location team. So I was involved in some of the negotiations that Masa did. But yeah, I was with him the whole time, supporting him getting locations.
He was very complimentary. He had sent me some great and very eloquent emails apologizing for not being able to be here himself. He just didn't feel he could pull it off with the language barrier was going to be too much. He said he's working on it and he really wishes that he could be here, but was bragging on your ability to step up and talk about filming and locations and some of the stories he wanted to tell. Well, I know that we've all heard, and there was a great article in the Compass magazine talking about Tokyo Vice, but we've all heard about the challenges of filming in Tokyo as a whole. Can you touch on that a little bit and just talk about how different it is to film in Tokyo and how it evolved? Because I understand that it was a lot harder in the beginning and they started to warm up a little bit to you and it got a little easier as you went on.
Yes, well, Tokyo, not everybody knows this, but I think it was known to be a notorious place for filming. It was known to be one of the hardest places to shoot. And in the 80s, Ridley Scott did a show, and he said he would never return to Japan again because it was just difficult to shoot. And in the 90s, Tarantino tried to get permission to shoot on the streets and he couldn't do it. So he just a lot of time had to steal shots. And I think that's why a lot of productions from Hollywood were discouraged to shoot in Japan. And even like one time, the brother of a famous Japanese actor became the mayor of Tokyo. And when he became mayor, he said he was going to change and make Tokyo a film-friendly place. And even he couldn't pull it off. And it was just like these past maybe, I would say like 5-6 years that Tokyo has started to become film-friendly. And we just started a new tax incentive last fall. But I feel like it still has a lot, we still have a lot to go. Because Tokyo, like for example, if we want to shoot on the streets, like let's say if you wanted to shoot on a street with a lot of shops, usually you go to the police first, but we would go to the police and tell them what we're doing, and then go to all the shops and get permission from each shop to shoot. and the police only care about not getting complaints. So as long as we talk to all the shops and get everybody's okay to shoot on the street, we would get permission from the police, and the permission is called a road usage permit, which just allows us to gives us permission to be on the street with a camera, but it doesn't allow us to stop traffic or stop pedestrians. So it's still really challenging to shoot on the street. And the police also give us that permission, but they never come to set. The only time they come is if they get a complaint. So that's all they
Oh.
care about. So we're kind of on our own. So when we're out shooting on the street, I'm always nervous about yeah, like us being able to get the shot. And in the past, because a lot of productions don't have the budget or the time to get proper permission, a lot of small independent films would just go and do guerrilla style, like just try to steal a shot. And what would happen is when the police find out, they used to come and stop the shoot, and the producer will always get taken away, and he would have to go to the police. He or she would have to go to the police station and write something called like a incident report or an apology report. And but the police later found out that we would still keep shooting, and then they realized that it's not the producer, that they need to take the director. So now they come after the director, and we have to stop shooting.
So we here in the States, when we want to work on a road, we will actually hire off-duty officers. Are you allowed to do that, to do any kind of traffic control, or you have to let traffic continue to move at all times?
We basically, by law, don't have the right to stop pedestrians. If it's in Tokyo, it is very difficult, but maybe outside of Tokyo, where there's less traffic, sometimes they will let us shoot like from 8 p.m. to like 2 a.m. or give us a window to shoot it. For Tokyo Vice, Masa negotiated with the Akasaka Police Department for 6 months, and he got permission to close down the street for about 6 hours. So we are very proud of Masa for pulling that off.
So you were allowed I mean, did you have to give them specific dates, or they just kind of gave you an open permit? You just notified them, we're going to be here that night for these 6 hours, or did you have to continuously update them on when you needed that? Or
well, in the beginning, they they always say the same thing, that we have to talk to all the shops and the restaurants, and Masa did that, and it's time consuming because they don't always say yes the first time. It always kind of starts with a no, and you have to keep visiting them, and sometimes go for drinks, and you become kind of friends with them in a way, and then they not all the shops, but most of the shops will eventually work with you. But I think Masa negotiated with the police to close down the street. And in the beginning, I think it was just like 2 hours. And he kept going back to the police, and he finally got like 6 hours to shoot. But it was a Sunday night when usually in those kinds of areas in Tokyo, where there's lots of Japanese style bars and restaurants, it's the weekdays that's the most busiest, and Sundays are most usually quiet. So they let us do it on a Sunday night, but we didn't get permission to shoot on that street until like 5 days before we were scheduled to shoot there.
so it was kind of an open permit. You never really knew if you were going to have it or not.
Yes. We didn't know
Wow.
until very late.
Did you have to pay all of the shop owners in like an inconvenience fee, or
Yes, that's a good question. We do pay the shops, not all of them, but some of the shops that are open for business.
right?
We pay them kind of like I don't know what you call it, like a disturbance fee.
Mhm.
to, yeah, just for, disturbing their business. And it's tricky because if we want to shoot on like one area of the street, and we pay all those shops and restaurants, but like 2 doors down that where we're not shooting, they hear about it. So
Oh, yeah.
we've had incidents where they came and caused us real trouble while we were shooting. So that kind of things happen. But yes, we do pay the shops.
If it makes you feel any better, the same thing happens here. So you're not alone.
Okay, good.
So, but given the fact that this is a crime focused show, especially organized crime, did you find that people were more or less reluctant to let you work? Were they open to filming, or did the content kind of put them off a little bit?
It kind of depends on I think it more depends on the scene. If it's like a scene, if we try to negotiate a location and it's a scene about like a killing, somebody getting murdered,
Mm-hmm.
then usually many times, yeah, a lot of times they wouldn't want us to be there. But yeah, sometimes some locations also do not like the fact that it's a story about the Yakuza. So we try to say it's not about the Yakuza, but it's a story about a newspaper journalist, and try to negotiate it that way. But it doesn't always work.
Well, and then I wonder if how popular is the show in Japan?
The show is yes, it's very popular. I mean, I don't know the statistics, but I get calls all the time. I think a lot of people are proud that along with also Shogun, that a show made in Japan is getting recognition worldwide, because it hasn't really happened before Tokyo Vice.
The reason I was wondering is, it's harder to talk about it being about a newspaper reporter once people get to see it and they realize yes, it is about a newspaper reporter, but it's very focused on the Yakuza.
Yes, we are actually also kind of nervous at times, because it is sensitive. I don't know why, but organized crime is very prominent in Japan still today. And this was about more than 20 years ago, but a very famous director made a film about the Yakuza, and then he was mysteriously murdered.
Oh,
So yeah, they are still around, and so I'm always kind of nervous when we're shooting in certain areas, particular areas in Tokyo.
there's a it's a fictionalized story of the making of The Godfather here that deals with that and how they actually ended up having to deal with organized crime to get The Godfather made. Did you run into anything similar to that in any of the areas? Did you actually find that you were having to work with the Yakuza at all, or anybody that you kind of had a feeling was associated?
Yes and no. And there was a law passed in Japan about, I think, 10 or 15 years ago. Before you were, first of all, a lot of the CD establishments in Japan are owned and run by the Yakuza. And when we shoot in those neighborhoods, before we could kind of pay like a coordinator to, help us be able to shoot in that particular area. But it became illegal to have any kind of dealings with the Yakuza, any kind of monetary transaction with the Yakuza. So in a sense, it became more difficult to shoot in certain areas. But yes, we have, I don't want to talk about it too much, but we have had some difficult situations with them shooting Tokyo Vice.
I know that when we did the article about this, we had a lot of conversations with Masa, and he mentioned because there were so many people to deal with from the public that you had to have a much larger locations team that had originally been planned for by the producers. Can you talk
Mhm.
a little bit on how the locations department structure was set up and how it grew from when you first started and what was anticipated versus what it ended up being?
Yes, not only, well, in season 2, we had a lot more locations than season 1 because the producers, executive producers, Alan Poole and JT Rogers, they they realized that Tokyo was one of the characters of the show and they wanted to show more of it. So we shot a lot more on location, which that alone meant a bigger crew, a bigger location crew. But if anybody's ever been to Tokyo, you will see that we don't have like large parking lot spaces to set up base camps. So what we do is if we're shooting like on the street, we would buy out a restaurant to use as a catering space, another little shop to use as a hair and makeup, and another one for wardrobe, and so we kind of build our own little base camp, and that's also all the negotiations for that are done by the location team. So they have yeah, a lot of work to do while we're shooting, and we shot Tokyo Vice in blocks. So we had different location teams for each block. We had 5 blocks, and yeah, we always had different blocks, working behind the scenes to prepare for the following shoot.
One other thing before we move on, I wanted to ask you about the Akasaka district because I know that became a location in the show, and a lot of people were curious if you could talk a little bit about that location and how it became a filming location and any challenges you had to deal with there.
Yeah, that was one of the locations I spoke about
Right.
earlier, and we have this in season 2. We have a new club called the Club Polina, and we built the interior of that club inside a gymnasium. We actually there's more and more shows now coming to Japan, and we've really run out of studios, soundstage spaces. So we had to travel 2 hours out of Tokyo, and we found a gymnasium, and we built Club Polina inside this gym. And for the exteriors, we wanted Alan Poole, the director, wanted to shoot. We looked at different places, but he chose to shoot in Akasaka. And there had never been a large scale shooting done on that street. And not only did he want to shoot there, but he wanted to have a car drive down the opposite direction of a one-way street. And that took a lot of negotiation for the location team. And so that was the location I was talking about before, where they gave us like a 6-hour window to shoot on a Sunday. But Masa went around, I think it was more than 200 shops in a span of 3 or 4 months. And the police probably thought that we would give up, but the location team kept going. And 6 months later, we had the permission to shoot for a limited amount of time.
Well, congratulations again on your nomination, and thank you for making time to join us at such a late hour. And
Thank you.
please pass on our congratulations to the entire locations team too. And I hope we get him on down the road. He expressed interest and regretted not being here, but you've been a great representative for the show, and we thank you so much for joining us and wish you the best of luck in the awards.
Thank you. Masa and I will be traveling from Tokyo, so hope to
Yes.
meet everybody then.
Everybody's very excited to have you guys. So look forward to having you at the award ceremony itself.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We're going to move on to the Gilded Age. And we have Lori and Alex joining us. You want to say hi, guys, so everybody can see where you are?
Hi. Greetings from Troy, New York, where we're shooting season 3 of The Gilded Age.
I remember when we found the show, my wife's from the city, and we immediately started digging around, looking for the houses to see which ones are left. and then only to find out that there aren't really any of them left in New York City. They're all you filmed all of this, well, the houses themselves outside of New York, correct?
The exteriors,
Yeah.
some of the interiors we shoot aren't necessarily New York City, but they're in the tri-state region. Some of the mansions, historic mansions, are repeat customers for us. Like in Nassau County, Long Island, we go to Hempstead House at Sands Point for George's office season after season. And no one would probably be surprised to know we go to Lyndhurst up in Tarrytown, New York to shoot Mrs. Fain's house. And I'm trying, we've done a bunch of that. We really avoid New York City in general because we can't bring horses and carriages there after the Nick did that many years ago, and the city decided that was not something they wanted to do again. So yeah, we really concentrate on tri-state, and a lot of our interiors are built, and many are filmed in Newport.
So I was surprised that as many of these cottages were still around, but they definitely get from that era, and the way it's presented in the show, you would definitely not know you weren't. Like I said, I assumed that some of these houses were still there, and somehow I had just missed them until I started hearing the street names and going, I don't think there's a house like that on Broadway or wherever anymore.
No, but the cottages, if you're referring to Newport, do exist,
Yes.
and Alex can
Yes,
speak to
yes.
that. They're in amazing condition thanks to the work of the Preservation Society all these years.
So how much was filmed in New York proper in the state, and then how much did you have to go to Rhode Island and other places for?
The producers like to keep it as lean as possible, and Newport presents challenges. You really can't shoot Newport during the summer because the cost of housing everybody is beyond. So we, season to season, we've had different schedules. This year we'll be there in October, and I can't remember when we shot for season 2, probably a similar time. We tend to scout when it's cool and shoot when it's cool. So we kind of pre-scout in the spring, and then we, over the summer, we confirm our deals, and then we come back in October, trying to bookend our, shoehorn ourselves into weekends when there's not some sort of food festival or other big event going on in Newport.
We touched on this a little bit when I had you on the Locations on 2 podcast. I think it was right after season 1. And you were talking about scouting. So we might as well touch base on that a little bit. When you're presented with this for the first time and knowing what you're trying to find, was your first thought Rhode Island, or did you just hit the ground and go, okay, what's left and where do I go from here?
Well, interesting, 2 things. When they called me to do this job, one was to find a backlot, which had yet to be really conceptualized. Number 2 was my first question. Number 2 was my boyfriend had just taken me to Newport for my birthday, and having spent time there, you begin to learn that every, save for the houses that are still there, many burned down. So my first question to the producer was, does season 1 end with a, fabulous fire, like a house going? Because I was like, oh no, that's going to be a tough location.
How you first started scouting them, yeah, and where you got the idea to go outside of New York and start looking for these places.
Yeah, no, I mean, Newport was the obvious choice. And I mean, the good and bad thing about shooting a show that takes place in this time frame is there's a limited number of houses that are available. So a number of the houses were known entities, places we've shot, again, in limiting ourselves more to Nassau County than Suffolk County, Long Island, trying to stay within the zone, the 30-mile zone in New York, and then also looking to see what we could harvest from Rockland County. We would have loved to have been able to go to some mansions that are still standing and available in New Jersey, but again, the tax incentive and our own travel constraints kept us from being able to expand beyond there. But, it's nice within a fairly short amount of time, I would say 4 to 6 weeks of scouting. We had wonderful scouts with us who were out there, just doing the homework, doing the research, and seeing what mansions still existed and what kind of shape they were in for us. It was tough turning over new options, things we hadn't seen before, but we did get into some private residences that I hadn't been into before, which was interesting.
Alex, what was your favorite and most challenging location? I'll give you 2 questions in one there.
Favorite and most challenging, yeah, they're not usually the same.
No.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, so I just I handle just the Newport portion. I'm based here in Rhode Island, so I it was fun. I mean, I think they had on their radar, Newport from the beginning because it is such a big part of the actual Gilded Age. I mean, so much of it took place there, and we have still quite a few mansions that have been saved. So they had the mansions in mind. I mean, one that was fun for me because when they first came out, they knew they wanted to see the mansions, but there was this other stuff that sort of wasn't on their radar. We have the International Tennis Hall of Fame in Newport, which is a spot I brought them on one of their first visits on season 1 and came into play much more in season 2. We kind of created the first US Open there for season 2, which was really fun to see come to life, and that space is so preserved already. To the fun thing about the Gilded Age, especially in Newport, is seeing us basically bring these spaces back to life and see them being used as they once were and how they were originally intended. So I do a lot of filming. So many different projects come into Newport to use these mansions and use them, but it's usually for some like lavish billionaire on some silly show that they just, so to get to bring them back to their natural state is really fun, and see the horses and the carriages and the whole thing, while at the same time being completely nerve-wracking because we're in a museum that I'm sure so many of us are used to dealing with. So
Well, I was going to say that's one of the nice things about your show for the public. They get the opportunity to see a lot of these and to walk around inside them when you're not working because they are museums.
Yeah.
And that was the casino. Is it called the casino where you did the US Open?
So it was originally the Newport Casino, is what it's referred to, but it currently houses the Tennis Hall of Fame, because it is where the Open sort of got its start in the late 1800s. So and some beautiful grass courts. Well, you see the show, you've seen what there is there.
I don't know which one of you wants to feel this, but I was wondering, do you find that as the show has gained popularity and people get more familiar with it, that it becomes easier or more difficult to accomplish what you're doing because people expect more from you because you're on a bigger show than they thought it was going to be when you first approached them?
I'm happy to take the first to try. I'd say the biggest challenge we had, not necessarily season 2, but season 1 was coming to Troy, New York, where the last time they'd seen a big film was Age of Innocence. And when we came in, the whole reason and expectation from the producers was to be able to take over the city. Troy is oriented around a monument in the center of town, and off of that monument runs 4 different streets, and we all stood there and thought, oh great, we'll close the whole place down. And as if that wasn't challenging enough, I all of a sudden realized, well, to close this place down really means we have to put down cobblestone, we have to put down dirt, we have to take away every street light. And so in as much as the city does have most of what we're looking for, everyone here has been in the instance where now we're scrambling to remove every air condition. We're talking with the art department about placing vinyls and signs on every single window. And for season 1, that was very difficult. It was difficult to tell every merchant. Well, first of all, it's interesting to get there in the beginning, and you have this period where you're trying to suss out just how busy is this city. And you get a handle on that, and you start setting budgetary expectations and thinking about how you're going to tell your producers how much you think it's going to cost to close the place for ostensibly a few days shoot, knowing in the back of your mind that that few days is going to turn into like a month. So for season 1, it was very difficult to get people on board with us. There wasn't a level of enthusiasm from the merchants, the same level of enthusiasm that we had from the homeowners, who are, very charmed and excited to showcase the homes that they've restored here. So for season 1, it was very much an uphill battle. By season 2, we had people who couldn't wait to have us back for all the reasons that we all know, which was the increase in foot traffic in the restaurants. We had come for season 1 on the heels of COVID. So there were a number of restaurants in particular that we really revived. We got to know the restaurant owners after we knew them before the COVID hiatus, and we were in touch with them toward the end of the hiatus, reaching out to them to say, hey, we're still coming. Can you host our director scout meals? Can you host our tech scout meals? You know, so all of a sudden these businesses that had been dead were fairly revived by us coming. So for season 2 and 3, you know, to answer your question, we now have cities, and even though the mayoral administrations have changed, fortunately, you know, the word is out, and there's been enough feedback from the town itself and from the state to have people really excited about having us here.
And everybody that's done period has had to deal with this to some extent, but I know it's probably even more challenging the further back in history you go for whatever the subject is. But dealing with things that are in place now for ADA or disability access and things like that, that totally would have not been part of the scenery in the era of the Gilded Age. Did you have any specific examples of that you just think about now, and how you tried to hide something that definitely was, you couldn't move, that was going to be in the scene but wouldn't have existed?
Yeah, I would say what was particular to season 2 opens with Easter. So there's an Easter promenade by each group of people in our show. And so the challenge of season 2 was to scout every church within, you know, a 15-minute drive from here, which if you've been in upstate New York, you know, is many, many churches. But many of them did have ADA compliant, you know, walkways and things that we had to deal with. And that was definitely part of the decision making, at least for the exteriors, and meant that we split some exteriors from interiors where we ended up. But we did remove them in many cases. I don't know that we hid a lot of them. We actually went for it and found great local contractors who helped us do some of that work.
And then going into a museum, we've all had to deal with removing art and hiring experts to deal with this. Were you able to move into some of these spaces and film them as is, or were you completely redecorating them in many cases and dealing with this special furniture and handling with special people to move these kinds of things?
At least with the Preservation Society in Newport, who owns about a dozen mansions that, or controls about a dozen mansions that we film in, they are filled with artifacts that are of the period, and we certainly take advantage of it and use some of the existing pieces. We've kind of, you know, having done a couple seasons there now, we have a good working relationship with them, and there's basically the general rule of thumb is we don't touch their stuff, and they come in and, you know, we give them directions on what we want to keep, what has to go away. There's rules to, you know, if it's their furniture, we can't put, you know, lit candles on, or, you know, but it's a very good working relationship with them. And they have not only the stuff inside their properties, but they have a bunch of stuff in storage that we pull out, and our design team works closely with them to take full advantage of the resources that they provide.
Well, guys, I really appreciate it. And I know we could go on and on with the challenges you guys have faced, but you did a fantastic job. And, you know, it's always fun to see a show knowing that you're not in the exact place it was filmed, or that it would have happened in real life, but you made it believable, and the locations were a huge part of that. And I thank you guys for your hard work, and congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good to talk to you again. Well, then also we'll move on to Palm Royale. Stacy Brashear is with us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And Stacy, who else did you say was joining you? Is it Chris?
Hi,
Marty, that's right. There we go. Marty, thank you for joining us as well. So this show is set around Palm Beach and South Florida in the 50s and 60s, and you're in California trying to recreate this, with the exception of this is something I want you to clarify for me, but my understanding is primarily exteriors were filmed in Florida and the rest was done in California. Sorry.
100% in California.
What about the President? There's a building in West Palm called the President. I thought, is that in California? some reason I always thought that was
No,
done
they
in
might
Palm
they
Beach.
might have gotten some stock footage or something like that, but
I
we
gotcha.
and trust me, it's
But it
been a
wasn't.
long contentious argument that we didn't do any establishing out there from the production designer. But yeah, the opening credits they did that post.
Well, I know a lot of people mention Mar-a-Lago and other
Yeah.
places, and we definitely see some exteriors, but I didn't know how much was, if anything, was actually shot there. So you clarified
No.
that for me. But you were recreating the Breakers and the Everglades Club and the Bathroom
Correct.
Tennis Club. So when you guys got started, where did you knew you had to do this in California? Did you get an opportunity to go out to West Palm to see what was left and see what the aesthetic was, or you just were looking from photographs and references
Just from
and trying
photographs.
to see what you could?
Tate Taylor was one of our executive producers, director, and him and John Carlos, our production designer, they went out for like a weekend to kind of get the vibe. And
Right.
we knew from our showrunner, Abe Sylvia, that Slim Aarons was just the vibe. So I studied more of Slim Aarons stuff and Palm Beach. Palm Beach is not a film friendly place at all. They look down
No.
at Hollywood big time. So, but the funny thing is, since the show's aired, the Colony Hotel is like our biggest fan, and they named plates after like dishes in their restaurant about our characters, and the actual Shiny Sheet does recaps on every episode. So maybe this year we might be able to finagle something out there, but we'll see.
It's funny how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, they were not into hosting us, not even with names like Kristen Wiig and Carol Burnett. They were like, no.
Yeah, it's hard to get their attention. They have enough money down in
Yeah.
Palm Beach.
Exactly.
And then, so you talk about the process. You guys get your list of locations and you knew the aesthetic. Did you already have some locations in mind? I mean,
Yeah.
most California location managers are very familiar with some of the more iconic old motels and special locations, but was there one or two that you were like, I don't know where we're going to pull that off?
Oh, there was a lot of them because Palm Beach is like this big, right? So, but the production designer wants more locations, and you're like, well, they don't even have this many locations in Palm Beach, you know. So, the most fun part about it was all the ladies, all the characters, right? So the production designer had very specific looks for each lady. So that was when you're scouting for it, and you know, you get the usual suspects, all the same mansions that you come across. And so what I did is I actually just went through real estate listings and to try to find something unique. And the Rollins mansion, Allison Janney's character, we had a house in La Cañada. I know, don't ever scout there, but we had a house, and it was an Art Deco Spanish house that was never been filmed. The lady was lovely. She was trying to sell it. And we at the time only had 3 days locations work there. And then when the script started coming out and evolving, it ended up being like 8 days, and you can only do max 7 days there. So it was like prep, shoot, and strike. We just couldn't do it. So we were so sad. I mean, it was like one of my major locations I checked off, and then we lost it because we couldn't pull it off. And so the production designer was really, really sad. He was upset. And I got home that night, and what I like to do is mindlessly scroll through Instagram or TikTok, and just to decompress my brain. And I follow these estate sale people that go to estate sales. And this girl was taking a video of this house. And I was like, oh my God, that's the house. Like I knew it was the house. And so I immediately contact that girl. She gives me the address. I send the video to John Carlos. And I said, this is our house. And he goes, you're not going to believe it. His set decorator just went to that estate sale and bought 5 truckloads of all the ladies' furniture for our sets. And it was the old actress Yvette Mimieux. And then, of course, she passed. Her family was super excited for the filming because, to maintain the house, but they sold it before our dates. And so I had to contact, I can't tell you who it is, but the new owner is a billionaire tech guy who's managed by BlackRock. Let's just say that. And we all had to sign NDAs. Never met him or his wife, but all his executive assistants. And we pulled it off, and we're going back this season.
And all the background had to sign NDAs too.
Yeah, everybody had to sign an NDA, even though, I mean, If you Google it, you'll see who bought the house, but
Right. It's not exactly hard to find out.
no, no, but it's good. So that was, so I'm a big fan of TikTok estate sale people showing you some really good period stuff.
Marty, what was your favorite location and the hardest for you to find for the show? Because I know you started off scouting season 1, correct?
Yes, well, the Frankensteining of our club was something that was fun. I did really love my favorite one that I found was the Rollins mansion that we lost in La Cañada, and how I had to track it down. And the house itself was just, there were some murders there in the 1970s, so it had some history. And
As most mansions do.
Yeah, and I did a property search, and I was able to connect it to a law firm in Newport Beach that turned out to be the owner. And we got it, and it was on the market and it was empty, but it was a stunning, stunning property. And as we all know, sometimes the best locations are the ones that we don't film in, right? But just having an opportunity to see them is a privilege. I guess one of the other favorite ones was just the tennis court. We really wanted to shoot at the Los Angeles Tennis Club in Hollywood, sort of near Paramount, where our stages were. So as Stacy had mentioned, Slim Aaron's was our touchstone. So we really leaned into that. And talking about being period specific, a lot of the tennis courts at the Everglades Club in Palm Beach was clay, and so the tennis courts in the 60s were monochromatic, all green, or if they're clay, maybe more of a gray. But now all the tennis courts are blue and green that are out there. So it was a lot of satellite laptop scouting, just going through all of Los Angeles and into Orange County and into Ventura County, and just doing that for hours and hours. And so, okay, there's a green court in Pasadena, and there's a green court in Burbank. But for one reason or another, we couldn't make it work. And we did a negotiation with the LA Tennis Club over a course of probably 3 or 4 months to try to make it work. And we shot this in 2022, so we're still feeling the effects of COVID. And that was the biggest obstacle that we faced with the club, that they were.
So the general manager of the club said no because of COVID, because they thought it would be a bad look for the members. But a couple months later, I called them to see if we can just do an exterior. And they put me in contact with another person who was in charge of the board. And he was livid that they didn't confront the board and they just denied us. So after we shot the Weddington tennis courts, in fact, we could have shot LA Tennis Club.
But we ended up, and this is, we thankfully had a backup at the Weddington Golf and Tennis Club, which is family owned in Studio City in Los Angeles. And they had one of their 16 courts is all green. And then we had some challenges there with wind screens, and there was a camp there, and we were right next to a fire station where we wanted to place condors, and the normal challenges that we face. But that was probably one that I was most proud of, although I couldn't actually be there for the filming because I did catch COVID like 2 days before we shot.
So they mentioned you have a few things you can show us, because I think we gave you film screen sharing, so you had a few visual aids to kind of illustrate some of your location selections.
Let me see. So this was our this is the Slim Aaron's shot this is of the Everglades Club. that was really one of our big inspirations, this particular shot. And this is the Los Angeles Tennis Club. That is they have two clay courts that are right next to each other. We ended up at Weddington in Studio City. Now it's a little darker perhaps, but we were still able to make it work. And that was, there was also a camp that was going on because we shot this in July, I think, or June. Yeah, it must have been July,
July.
of 2022, where, well, we made it work, and the biggest challenge actually was getting the windscreens. We had to get finding a vendor that was able to put up windscreens at the last minute. And here's the last, sorry, this is our shot. As you can see, that Kristen Wiig. So it was a good show. It was a good show to be on.
So going back for season 2, do you have a location you're dreading going back to, or one you're really excited to go to?
We have to duplicate Mar-a-Lago. It is such a unique property, and it's so freaking gorgeous, and it's so ornate. I'm nervous about that one. I'm hoping clearances doesn't let us use it, and then I can just do a fake hotel.
So you're trying to get into Mar-a-Lago?
No, because they're no.
No.
No. Well, it's one, the producers don't really want to go out there for anything crazy, like, traveling and all that. I don't think he would let us in there either.
Well, you never know. Somebody in the chat room just said that the county is very film friendly. It's the city that's different and
I bet.
challenging for you.
Well, it was Worth Street that we were trying to do something with, which is our equivalent to Beverly Hills or Rodeo. So yeah, that's difficult anywhere. Marty, did you want to talk about the whale? So our whale.
Oh, the whale, scouting for the whale, and we were
when we transported it. So they built a mock-up for visual effects to work off of, and for Alice and Janney to have the conversation, so she has a focal point. It was like a 35-foot mock-up whale that we had to transport to San Pedro on a big semi-trailer. So it was whales just going down the freeway. That was fun.
What other challenges we had? I guess the biggest challenge is just trying to well, we were lucky that Palm Beach is, we didn't have to worry about palm trees that we frequently have to worry about in LA. And we had the great benefit, our production designer was just so darn helpful to us in giving us his leads, so that really cut down a lot on the vetting process. That we didn't have to look at 50 places. We ended up looking at 15 or 20 places because John Carlos gave us these parameters and leads and inspirational photos that gave us direction.
Oh, it's interesting. Darren Getz was in the chat, was just saying that Trump's apartment was the devil's and devil's advocate. So who knows? Maybe you can film there.
I would love it. Don't know how the crew is going to
and Michelle Hillary's in here. She's the film commissioner for Palm Beach County. Anything you can do, reach out to her.
Oh, awesome. Will do.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you.
I won't give out her phone number and dox her here in the chat, but in the show, but there it is in the chat for you.
I'm gonna write it.
Well, guys, thank you so much. I was really, my wife and I are about halfway through the show. We've been trying to catch up on all of our viewing with work and whatnot, and I'm really enjoying it. And I love the aesthetic of the show. And the locations you've selected really are doing a great
Thank you.
job.
It was fun.
And James Small just said, bring it to Palm Beach County. They'll find you locations.
Okay. I'll let the producers know.
Well,
Awesome.
thank you guys. We
for having
appreciate
me.
you joining us. Good. Congratulations again on your nomination.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to a period that is totally different from where we've been on this so far. We're going to go talk about a post-apocalyptic future with Paul Kramer and Chris Arena for Fallout. Hi, guys.
Hey, everyone.
Unmuted.
Thanks for having us.
Hey there.
Obviously, the obvious question for you all, you're creating locations that people think they already know for a different reason because of a video game that's incredibly popular.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a pre-existing video game world with very dedicated fans and with iconic places and iconic characters. You know, the big challenge was that we're telling a story that takes place 200 years after a nuclear war, hundreds of years in the future, in an alternate timeline on the West Coast, and we're based in Brooklyn, New York. So
All of the exact opposite of what you just said.
yeah, but therein lies the fun of the challenge. You know?
Exactly.
It's creating a world. So that gave us a special kind of energy.
So when you got the assignment, you got the job, and you knew, okay, we've got to go find Voltec's headquarters, or what was the location you were like, what in the world are we going to do here?
Well, you know, there's a bit of a backstory to that because we had been prepping another Jonah Nolan project. It was an epic sci-fi project called Valley of the Gods, based at Steiner Studios. We had production offices. We had 3 stages rented, and we were about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months into it. And it was a story that took place sort of like a Game of Thrones in outer space, other galaxies, thousands of years in the future. So we had already started looking for deserted landscapes, destroyed city environments, and other planets. So we had a bit of a heads up, bit of a head start. But I think the thing was to become familiar with the game, to read the history of the game. And what I found useful, I never played the game, but online you can find these guys that are playing the game, and you can watch along with them as they go through stage by stage. And I made sure that the entire team was familiar with that, so that we all captured the vibe and the soul of the show. And then it was all off to the races. So
I advocated for an actual video game system that we could all play just to get, really into it. But YouTube is what we ended up going with.
Yeah. So there were some locations that we were able to repurpose, and some other things that, just from scouting in the New York area for many, many years and coming upon these unique environments, I always thought this place has such a life of its own. It has to be exploited in some story somewhere. And we found it. And in a few cases that inspired the aesthetic of the story that we were creating. It's in Brooklyn. It was an army depot. It was built shortly after World War I as an army depot and transfer station for World War II. And this is Brooklyn. Not what you think of. So originally,
That's awesome.
There are scenes that take place in what's called the Enclave in the show, and when you look at some of the reference art from the game and the lore of the game, it's a sort of a high-tech sci-fi environment. But looking at this kind of shifted the aesthetic to more of a worn-out, brutalist, not quite steampunky, but it was just awesome. I mean, you walk in here and you're in another world.
Is it occupied in any way now? Is it used for anything?
Yes. There are startup companies and small manufacturing companies that are occupying a lot of the spaces.
Interesting.
Museums store a lot of their stuff in there as well.
Yeah, this is the common area.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was one.
Yeah, it's got such an interesting look because you've got the post-apocalyptic aspect, and then you kind of got the throwback mid-century kind of aesthetic.
Yeah. I have a ton of pictures. You guys have some time?
Well, we got a few minutes. So show us a few of your favorites.
Okay. Well, you know what? I think we're thinking about which might be most satisfying. Well, let's just go to one that I thought was just kind of awesome. Verplank Quarry. If you saw the show, this is where the gulper comes out of the water.
Yes.
Okay. You got to see this thing. This is Verplank, New York, in the town of Cortland. This was a quarry that it was a working quarry. And some point, I think in the late 20s, I forget which decade, but they dug so deep they hit the water table. They hit an underground stream, and it started flooding. And every day they'd pump out like I don't know, 3 million gallons of water. It shut down, I think, in the 50s or early 60s. They walked away, they left it. It started filling up with water, and now it's about 300 feet deep. And on the bottom there are conveyor belts. There's trucks. There's buildings. It's crazy.
And it was
So-
limestone, so that
I'm-
water is about as clean as you could find.
Oh yeah, it's like Caribbean crystal clear blue water.
Yeah, quarries are amazing when you can find a good one that'll let you film there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the Pine Barrens, I believe you used for part of it, the automotive graveyard.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Wade salvage.
Yeah. So here the challenge was there are two sections to it. There's the main area here where the gulper scene takes place, and there's an area just around the bend, the scene where the ghoul is using Lucy as a lure, and he's plunging into the water, bringing her back up. To get there, you have to kind of skirt around a narrow path along the edge of the water and some rocks in the woods. But when Jonah Nolan, he wanted to film this scene at the other end, we had to create a path. How long was it, Chris? Like a quarter
Oh, at least a quarter mile, more like a half mile.
through the woods for to lug, there it is, to lug equipment down to this area.
I love it when we have to kind of create the way to make the logistics happen. That's always a really unique challenge. And
Well, that's
something
just
people
it.
don't
Yeah, there's a
understand
wall
that
there. How do
falls
we
in
do-
our area of responsibility.
Yeah. Okay. So the other one you mentioned, oh, Wade Salvage. Okay, so there's this town in the show called Philly, and Lucy's on a pilgrimage to Philly to find her kidnapped dad. Of course, before we're aware of what Philly really is, we're imagining it's like a destroyed Philadelphia, but it's Philly because it's built on a landfill. So now I can't take credit for finding this place. When the script pages came in, and it's probably before the script pages, just conceptual, but the art department was doing some research as a source of props, etc. So they came upon this place, and we all looked at it and said, wow, this is it. Let me see if I can just get all of them for you. Okay, so this is a salvage yard in South Jersey. And okay, so here's the concept. Also, one of the things that we all find really satisfying is when you can use a little bit of movie magic, and you take a look at speaking in earlier location managers. You take a piece of the story, you find an exterior here, you find an interior there, you find a piece of property in one place, you glue it all together. This is an overhead map of the salvage yard. And what we decided to do was, in the story, this is the outskirts, the upper level. There's pictures I'm going to show you. The lower level, the downtown of Philly, was an outdoor stage set that Howard Cummings, the designer, and his team built in a back lot at Snyder, surrounded by shipping containers. So to tie the two together, we created a gigantic tube. And if you see my cursor there, we placed a tube right over here in the real location. And in the story, they're supposed to travel through the tube and then pop out on the other side. So here we are. There's our DP doing some scouting. More shots of Wade salvage. I mean, you know, jet aircraft, prop plane fuselages from the 40s and 50s.
Experimental planes. There was an
buses.
army base not too far away, and whenever they decommissioned something that didn't work out, I think Wade and his brother went ahead and picked it up and put it in their salvage yard.
Oh, they bought stuff from all over, a lot of Army surplus.
They had quite an eclectic collection.
So this is the set that was built in the Steiner back lot. Now, this is, you know, the joy of what we do, right? I'm walking through the set, and I come through the tunnel, and I see this, and the sun is setting over Manhattan. And this is the foreground, and Manhattan is the background. And it's like, don't you love this? I love this. Now, what I thought was that they would CGI out the skyline. But in fact, if you watch the show, they took advantage of the skyline. They just altered it a bit. So it looks like it's a, you know, post-apocalyptic remains of another city skyline.
JJ popped up with the question that I was going to ask as well, because I see that salvage yard and I wondered what safety had to say about it and what kind of remediation y'all had to do to make it workable for you while you were there.
Oh, well, safety had a lot to say about it.
Yeah.
We did a lot of tick removal, poison ivy remediation, and we had to, shut down basically 90% of the area we weren't using to the crew. They couldn't go anywhere near it.
Well, clearly,
right.
sorry to interrupt. You have
Sure.
walls of twisted metal. So there are sharp objects and there are sharp rusted objects. And how stable are these walls of metallic debris? So of course we had our safety guy walk through. We checked things out. There was a corrugated metal shack that we were filming under. We had a structural engineer test it. A lot of these locations that are unique because they're desolate and look like they're crumbling require a lot of this kind of advanced research. So of course we have environmental safety, structural safety protocols in place all the time. Oh, but again, as to Chris's point of ticks and mosquitoes and exposure to metals, we're telling everyone long pants, long sleeve shirts, but you have a few diehards that always don't heed the warning.
You brought in a few extra medics for the tick removal, or who handled that for you? Because I know that the West Coast folks don't know anything about this.
Well, what we do is we have very, very tiny medical people that are about the size, a little bit bigger than ticks. So we drop them off in a cup, basically, in each location before we show up, and they spread around and they initiate negotiations with the tick community.
And to back them up, we go to whatever local vendors are recommended by the town.
Yeah. So,
they're
some
always
of
it's a new line on the call sheet. You've got a snake wrangler, and then right below
Yes.
that, tick remover.
Yes, yeah, we had to do a bunch of spraying. A bunch of the LA folks were a little freaked out by it, and yeah, there were some, people picking ticks off each other. Can I go to another location that I found satisfying because it was a patchwork? And if you remember the final the assault on Griffith Observatory. Griffith. Okay. So there's the actual Griffith from the air. So we needed to find a way to replicate this environment for the final attack scene. And in the story, the remains of the Griffith Observatory are occupied by a woman who has her own cult there, and they have their own community and their own cornfield. And there's just an example of the, I'd never been here, but we obviously did our research, and Howard Cummings, our designer, is very familiar with the location. It's kind of Art Deco rotunda. So this is a former courthouse in the Bronx. The entrance. That's the reverse. You see, you're definitely not a Griffith. Here's one of our directors, and Howard Cummings. The rotunda, sort of already stressed and dressed down. The director came in. He was this British guy. Said, "Well, there's not much else we have to do here." That was very bad British, but okay. Now, then we went to the North Shore, Long Island, and Laura, you probably know this one. We call it the old Woolworth Mansion. Now, in terms of the general palette and general shape and scale, it turns out also that it was empty at the time. Someone else a new owner had bought it. It was empty, and they were in the midst of re-landscaping the entire property. Perfect for us to put our fake cornfield in and do some pyrotechnic work there. Cornfield we constructed.
Wow.
The morning of. Okay, you got that. What else do we want to show you?
How many? Well, I know that there was a beautiful location, but it was not here. It was in the desert in Namibia, right?
Oh, right. But before we get to Namibia, because I was not in Namibia and I do not have any pictures of Namibia.
I know I was going to ask where that came from.
Now, let's see. Okay. Not far from, let me just show you some pictures here. There's a scene, part of the story sequence is Lucy comes out of the vault and she's walking through the irradiated wasteland, which is mostly desert. And just before she comes to Philly, she climbs this desert sand dune rise and sees a sign pointing her way to Philly. And then the terrain changes into a wooded area. So This is New Jersey. This is Triborough Quarry, not far from the Wade Salvage Yard.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's the spot where Lucy does her thing. That's our DP, one of our scouts. So welcome to New Jersey. That's actually the moon. I just thought I'd throw that in there. Okay.
So that transition to the African location?
In the story, it comes after the Africa location. That was in Skeleton Coast in Namibia. And I was not there, but it looked wonderful. They found an abandoned German mining town called Kolmanskop, which worked out beautifully for them.
Was that something that someone suggested to you all, or did y'all do the research and then find a local to scout it for
For
you?
some reason, early on, Jonah knew that he wanted to go to Namibia. I think he'd done his own research early on. And so that's what set the wheels in motion.
Well, I know when I heard this show was being made, the first thing that popped in my head was, I don't know how they're going to pull this off with the post-apocalyptic. Is this all going to be CG? Or, you know, how are they going to make this happen? Especially with the built-in audience you have from the game, you are almost guaranteed to watch, but then to criticize as well, since they already think they know what it's supposed to look like. How has it been received by the community that's so loyal to the game? Are they loving it, or are they giving you a hard time about some of the locations?
Everything, first of all, I wouldn't have to worry about them giving me a hard time, but everything I've seen, Dodd, is they love it. They love it. They love it. They love it. They love it.
Everything's been positive.
That's well, you guys did a great job. I really didn't know how you were going to pull it off, and I assumed most of it was going to be on LED walls, and then a lot of sets built and then some practical combined. But it's amazing when I started doing some reading about where you found all these locations and where it was filmed, how many were practical, and it really comes together incredibly well, and it's totally believable. You guys did a really nice job.
Before you cut me off, I want to show you one more thing.
Oh, sure.
Red Rocket, which is an iconic location in the show, Red Rocket gas station. Now,
yes,
not far from where I live, there's a gas station that has this kind of 50s style, long pointed triangular overhang. And I'd noticed it and thought about it briefly. Chris Arena, to his credit, was familiar with it as well and said, Paul, we got to use this. And I thought to myself, this one place, it's on a pretty busy road. There's buildings and trees around it. I don't know that we'll be able to control it and control the environment completely enough. I don't think so. We were looking at other things in more desolate environments that we'd build onto. But Chris kept bringing it up. Paul, what about that 9W gas station? So I drove by in a weekend and I got my feet on the ground and I realized that it's a pretty big lot. It has enough depth that if you can establish it with a drone aerial shot and CG the immediate environment, once you get on the ground there's enough depth you can get the angles and coverage you need, I think. So that's how I pitched it, and that's what they did. So let's do this. Okay, so there's our reference. So there's the research photo
from the game.
There's the
and there's the gas station. I filmed at that gas station on various projects over the years, and there's not many like it, if any more like it in the area. And as soon as I saw that concept photo,
what they did is they built the bottom part of the rocket, as you can see here. And the actual red rocket part on the top was CG'd, but the rest of it was practical. Just them putting it together.
Did you leave any of it when you pulled out? Is it still there?
No. Now, then we had our location assistants there wrapping up after the filming. There was actually a picture I sent to Howard Cummings, our designer, after he left during wrap. Now, my adult daughter, doesn't live far from there, and she really wanted me to bring her to see this, so I did. And then she put together this video that I'll share with you guys.
It looks great. Well done. That really, you guys did a really fantastic job. And it's really exciting when we look back at the scope of the projects that were nominated this year, because, and especially in this conversation, we got to highlight so many things that I'm always intrigued by, and that so many people don't realize fall under our umbrella responsibility that make the show happen, like the safety issues, ticks, and who's handling that, the dealing with museums, closing roads, and especially in these highly sensitive areas like Tokyo and other places. So I really want to commend everyone that was nominated. You guys did a great job, but congratulations to all of our nominees. I think that they were an amazing representation of why locations is so important today in the business and needs more recognition. So thank you all again for joining us to talk a little bit and share. Hope everybody will join us for the 2:00 call, period features and commercials with Miguel and Bob Williams moderating. If you haven't registered, please go register. A lot to share there, but I really want to thank everyone here and congratulate you all. You've done an amazing job, and you're great representatives of location management today and why our job is so important. So thank you all for joining us for this. And
Thanks for hosting, Dodd.
It's been a pleasure. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
having us.
you.